Guys, it is good to be back. I'm sorry that I've not posted on YouTube for a while, but due to an issue with audio, I wasn't able to do any long form content, but we have got a banger for you today. So let's not say no more and let's get straight into it. In the early 1980s, a quiet beach town in California became the epicenter of what would become the longest and most expensive criminal trial in US history. A preschool was accused of being the site of horrific satanic rituals, secret tunnels, and mass child abuse. This is the story of the McMartin preschool trial, a case that destroyed lives, stirred a national hysteria, and left behind chilling questions that still haunt the American public to this day. Tunnels, satanic rituals, people in cloaks. Where would all these children collectively put these types of things in their imagination? How come even in this present day, that case just sounds like something from the present day? How come the themes are all very, very similar? However, this was 40 odd years ago, or whatever it was. It all kicked off in Manhattan Beach, California in 1983. Judy Johnson, a mother of a young boy named Matthew, had accused Ray Buckley, a teacher at McMartin Preschool, of molesting her son. Judy claimed that her son had said Ray had taken his temperature by inserting a thermometer in you-know-where, I'm not going to say. She also described bizarre rituals including underground chambers and people in robes. Doctors conveniently claimed that Judy suffered from paranoid schizophrenia and she was later hospitalized for this. You know, when you're dealing with these types of things, what you gotta remember is the people who judge and oversee all this stuff, it's gonna be some of them people who have common interests in keeping this all hush hush, and we know that. So one child has gone to his mother and claimed that this has happened, this horrific thing. She's done what any mother would do. She's gone to the authorities, she wants clarity. Our mother's not gonna not believe the kid over something like that. Kids have imaginations, but that is very detailed and specific. It's not common for them to make something like that up. Why would they even know about something like that? As for the mental health issues, you know, we aren't mental health experts. We can only speculate. But how come whenever something happens, usually the person who are making allegations conveniently become crazy? They're out of their mind. But before that, it wasn't crazy. Why is that a common theme? Despite the shaky grounds of the initial complaint, the Manhattan Beach Police Department sent a letter to over 200 parents of former McMartin students urging them to question their children about the abuse, and a spark was lit. This is what lit the spark, and it was about to ignite into a national firestorm. Hundreds of children from the school were interviewed by Key McFarlane, a social worker at Children's Institute International. Many of these children claimed to have been abused, not just by Ray, but by his mother, Peggy McMartin Bucky, and several other teachers. Underground tunnels, animal sacrifices, flying witches. One child even claimed to have seen an animal being dismembered. Hundreds of children were interviewed, and they created an image of what had happened collectively. Obviously, stories are going to differ, but there was a lot of common ground. There was enough common ground for me to make this stick and have a case, and then for them to spend millions and millions of pounds on investigating it. I'm sorry, but I refuse to believe that 100 children are all telling lies. But as I was saying, I definitely trust 100 children over the government. This case wasn't happening in a vacuum. The 1980s were the height of what came to be known as the Satanic Panic, a widespread fear that satanic cults were infiltrating schools, daycares, and even homes. You may even remember shows like Geraldo and Oprah, which aired sensational stories of ritual abuse. Law enforcement agencies across the country were even trained to look for supposed satanic symbols and rituals, and the McMartin case became the crown jewel of this hysteria. Ray Buckley spent over 5 years in jail without ever being convicted. The public was outraged by what had happened, and the media circled like vultures. The trial began in 1987 and it dragged on for 7 years, costing taxpayers the amount of over $50 million. The defence tried to imply that the witnesses were contradicting themselves and their stories weren't adding up, but I mean, these were just children. They believed the interviewers manipulated the children into drawing up a picture of something that never actually happened. And due to what they described as a lack of physical evidence, Peggy McMartin Buckey was acquitted of all charges, and in 1993, after a hung jury, all charges against Ray Buckey were dropped. The McMartin family was ruined, the children were left with psychological trauma, and they were exhausted from being thrown into a media circus. Even decades later, a lot of conspiracy theorists believe that this did happen, and the abuse certainly took place. But official investigations, including FBI reports, said that the evidence was not credible to prove that a satanic conspiracy ever took place. Anyone who's deep down the rabbit hole knows that this is the type of stuff that they're into. So, how did all these children come to conjure up activities that they're involved in? But it was all a lie. They all just imagined it. Starting to see the picture here. The McMartin case set off a wave of similar trials, which we will cover at a later date. In the 80s and 90s, the Little Rascals case, the Fells Acres case, each case shared similar themes, and I think it'll be interesting for us to get into those at a later date. A lot of the staff were arrested. How can you make arrests if you don't have substantial evidence? How can you arrest that many people and put them behind bars if you don't have substantial evidence? If you don't have any substantial evidence, £15 million. Imagine how much £15 million was back then. It seems to me like the real issue was the amount of money that was being spent on this case. It seems to me like they just wanted to conclude it and get it over and done with. So the defence's main point was they didn't like the techniques that were used to interview the children. You've got 100 people saying one thing, and your wall that you've built to stand against that is you don't like the way the interview techniques were used. You don't like the interview techniques that were used. The FBI found no credible evidence. The FBI is not an agency that I have any faith in, that has any competence whatsoever. The FBI didn't find no evidence. How convenient. Guys, I just want to say thank you for watching. I hope you found that interesting. I hope you take this as a step to go and do some research and look into it yourself and see how crazy it is. If you did manage to get all the way to the end of this, make sure you drop me a follow and leave a little comment. It all helps the algorithm. Thank you.